Well, it happened again. Stormy Daniels quashed Donald Trump. The breaking defendant Trump news of the night is that Stormy Daniels has humiliated Donald Trump once again. And while she was at it, she humiliated his criminal defense lawyers. Tonight, Judge Juan Merchan granted Stormy Daniels' motion to quash a subpoena from Donald Trump, demanding a vast range of information about the making of a documentary film titled Stormy. The judge denied the Trump motion, saying this request is overbroad, seeks general discovery, and is not limited to the subject matter of this case. Judge Merchan had already quashed a subpoena for essentially the same material from NBC Universal, the producer of the documentary. The ruling by Judge Merchan came at the end of a day that began with a hearing about the district attorney's claim that Donald Trump has violated a gag order that prohibits him from, among other things, saying anything about jurors in the case. Prosecutor Christopher Conroy told the judge about a social media post that we reported as breaking news on this program last week. And the prosecutor noted what I noticed about it when we reported it here, that Donald Trump presented it as a quote from Jesse Watters at Fox, but in fact, Donald Trump rewrote what Jesse Watters said and added to that so that it was not actually a quotation of someone else. The district attorney Conroy told the judge, quote, "This is a very troubling post. At 5:46 p.m., the defendant published a post on his Truth Social account that stated they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury. That whole thing is in quotation marks. It's attributed to somebody named Jesse Watters. What Mr. Watters said was they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge, period." So it is a hybrid of something somebody else said together with something the defendant apparently added on his own. I think the link to the jurors in this case, to this proceeding, I think it's very clearly a violation of your order of April 1st. Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer, Todd Blanche, first tried to defend that post by Donald Trump by saying that it was a repost of what someone else wrote. But Judge Merchan would have none of that. Judge Merchan, it was posted on April 17th at 5:46 p.m., and it says, in quotes, they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge in order to get on the Trump jury, closed quote. And then it's attributed to Jesse Watters. Is that, in fact, what Mr. Watters said? Mr. Blanche, he said they are catching undercover liberal activists lying to the judge. And then not, at the time, I don't believe he said, in order to get on the Trump jury, Judge Merchan. So your client manipulated what was said and put it in quotes. Am I right, Mr. Blanche? I wouldn't use the word manipulation, Your Honor, but the rest of the quote is not part of the quote. Judge Merchan, okay. My other question is, this is not a repost at all. Mr. Blanche, no. Judge Merchan, no. This is something that was said on TV, and your client had to type it out. He had to sit there, use the quotation marks, the shift key, and type everything out, and then add those additional words. So your argument that these are reposts and therefore they are not a violation, that does not apply to exhibit number 10, is it? Mr. Blanche, number 10 is not a repost. Agreed. Judge Merchan, so what is your argument as to Exhibit 10? Mr. Blanche, Judge, the argument as to Exhibit 10, it's ambiguous whether this statement violates the gag order. The gag order says Donald Trump is prohibited from making or directing others to make public statements about any prospective juror or any juror in this criminal proceeding. So Donald Trump cannot make any statement about a juror. No statement at all. That gag order wording could not be more clear. Donald Trump's criminal defense lawyer insulted the intelligence of the judge and everyone else in the courtroom when he then said, quote, President Trump is being careful with your honors rules. And the judge interrupted, saying, you, Mr. Blanche, you are losing all credibility. I have to tell you that right now. You are losing all credibility with the court. Now, you can spend years in a courtroom and never hear a judge say anything like that to competent lawyers. Judge Merchan said that he would rule on Donald Trump's violations of the gag order at some point after today's court session. And after Donald Trump left the courthouse, he put in writing a lie that he said when he arrived at the courthouse today, and he spoke to the reporters gathered before he entered the courtroom. The in writing version is more coherent than the loony version that Donald Trump said into the microphone this morning. So we will go with the written version at 4:35 p.m. today. Thousands of people were turned away from the courthouse in Lower Manhattan by steel stanchions and police. That is an absolute lie. I have walked down there several times. Traffic is free flowing in and around the courthouse. Pedestrians, traffic is not hindered in any way. There was a large public gathering area in front of the courthouse where I saw exactly 3 Trump supporters gathered there yesterday. Early reports today said only 1 Trump supporter showed up, while the 85,000 Trump voters in Manhattan completely ignored what was happening at their local courthouse. Absolutely no one has been turned away anywhere in Lower Manhattan. It is actually much easier to approach and stand outside and gaze at Trump's courthouse than it is to see the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree in December, where the crowds and police barricades do indeed actually restrict access. Von Hilliard delivered today's best response to the Trump lie on Twitter, saying, Trump just claimed that the police have shut down the streets around the courthouse for blocks and that his protesters can't be here. Just not true. There is one pro-Trump person here, and the main street along the courthouse is open to traffic. And Von Hilliard, of course, included this video in his Twitter post showing you just how easily vehicles move around and just how much of no one is actually there in support of Donald Trump. The truth is, Trump supporters do not care that Donald Trump is being prosecuted. They've made that very clear. He has begged them to show up, and they have refused. Yesterday, Donald Trump said, America-loving protesters should be allowed to protest at the front steps of courthouses all over the country. So there's Donald Trump summoning Trump supporters in Idaho to go to the courthouse in Boise and stage a big protest for him, or in North Dakota, or in Utah, or Alabama, or Texas, somewhere where there's a vast majority of voters for Donald Trump. Any courthouse in America, Florida, anywhere, and no one anywhere in the country showed up at any courthouse to protest the criminal prosecution of Donald Trump. 74 million Trump voters said absolutely no, we will not protest Donald Trump's criminal prosecution. We do not care. They aren't the only people who don't care. Donald Trump is the only criminal defendant I have ever seen who cannot round up a single family member to sit in the front row of the courtroom in support of criminal defendant Donald Trump. His third and current wife isn't there. Neither of his daughters are there. None of his sons are there. Not a single personal friend has showed up as a show of support for Donald Trump, not one. Serial killer and sometimes cannibal Jeffrey Dahmer had his parents in the courtroom every single day of his criminal trial. Every day. Donald Trump has less familial support than Jeffrey Dahmer had in the courtroom. Today, President Biden campaigned in Florida, where next week Governor Ron DeSantis' abortion ban goes into effect.
For 50 years, the court ruled that there was a fundamental constitutional right to privacy. But 2 years ago, that was taken away. Let's be real clear. There's one person responsible for this nightmare, and he's acknowledged and he brags about it, Donald Trump. Trump bragged how proud he was to get rid of Roe v. Wade over. He took credit for it. He said there has to be punishment for women exercising their reproductive freedom. His words, not mine. He described the Dobbs decision as a miracle. Maybe it's coming from that Bible he's trying to sell. Whoa. I almost wanted to buy one just to see what the hell's in it. Folks, it was no miracle. It was a political deal to get rid of Roe v. Wade. A deal. A political deal he made with the evangelical base of the Republican Party to look past his moral, if they look past his moral and character flaws in exchange for his commitment to appoint justice to the Supreme Court who would overturn Roe. Don't think he's making a deal right now with MAGA extremists to ban nationwide abortion in every single state, because he's making it. If Congress ever passes a ban, I will veto that ban. Elect a Democratic Congress, Kamala and I will make Roe v. Wade the law of the land again.
In November, a Florida ballot initiative will give voters the opportunity to protect abortion access in the state constitution.
All over this country, from Ohio, Kansas, Michigan, Kentucky, Wisconsin, Virginia, women and men in every background voted to record numbers to protect, in record numbers, to protect reproductive freedom. This November, you can add Florida to that list. You can. Are you ready to do that? You got to show up and vote. Are you ready to protect freedom? It was Donald Trump who ripped away the rights of freedom of women in America. It'll be all of us who restore those rights for women in America. And when you do that, we'll teach Donald Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans a valuable lesson. Don't mess with the women of America.
Later, President Biden met with a local organization where he said this.
I think Florida's in play nationally. This election is a basic old-fashioned election. It's about getting out the votes. It's about putting together campaigns the old-fashioned way. Not that we don't use all the technology available, but just everything from knocking on doors to putting up road signs to make sure that we get people to the polls, all those things.
And a union worker thanked President Biden for saving his pension.
The only reason I have a pension is because of you.
Well, we did get that done.
Yes, now is Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts. She is a candidate for re-election this year, along with President Biden. Senator, there's the president in Florida today. He's covering, obviously, the abortion issue in that state and the ban that's going to be in effect there, and the Florida women have to live under. What is the sense in states like Massachusetts where it appears that rights like this are safe?
Look, rights nowhere in America are safe if Donald Trump retakes the White House. And the Republicans have made that clear. The extremist wing of the Republican Party owns that party, and they have made clear they will go for a nationwide abortion ban. And right now, the Heritage Foundation is actually laying out plans so that even if they don't have control of the House and Senate, how it is that if they can get Donald Trump into the White House, they will be able to effectively outlaw abortion all across this country. You know, next week, we're going to see in Florida this extreme abortion ban go into effect. And the president said it right. There is exactly one person who is ultimately responsible for that, and it is Donald Trump, who has bragged about the extremist Supreme Court he put in place to remove Roe versus Wade. And now we're just watching chapter after chapter after chapter of how the extremists are coming for abortion rights, not just in red states, but in red states, blue states, purple states, every state.
Do the Democrats believe that this changes possibilities in Florida beyond just that ballot measure?
You know, look, I think it's clear that Democrats can win Florida. Abortion will be on the ballot. It's going to be on the ballot in all 50 states. And Florida is going to see it front and center with a specific abortion ballot initiative. This is about as clear as it gets in the comparison. Donald Trump is the guy who put in place the extremist Supreme Court specifically for the purpose of overturning Roe versus Wade. And you heard it from Joe Biden himself. Give him a chance, give the Democrats control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, and we will make Roe versus Wade law of the land again. You can't ask for a difference bigger than that.
A man said to Joe Biden in Florida today, the only reason I have a pension is because of you. He got cheers for that. And it's one of those items that most voters don't even know about.
Yeah. You know, this one is about some legislation that we got through shortly after Joe Biden got into office to be able to protect people's pensions that had been hollowed out back during the 2008 crisis. And I want to add, he actually did another thing for pensions today, or for retirement funds. And that is, it won't get a lot of attention, won't get big headlines, but the fiduciary rule has gone into place. The Labor Department, Julie Su, who is the acting Secretary of Labor, announced a rule that says basically your investment advisor has to work in your best interests, not take money from insurance companies and others in order to put you into financial products that are not in your best interest. That's something that over time may never get a headline, but it's going to mean that a whole lot of people in this country, when they hit their retirement years, are a lot safer because of Joe Biden and his administration.
Senator, I've been saying for years, especially in years past that now seem in the distant, our distant history, where it didn't seem to many voters to make that much difference who they voted for in a presidential election, that there was always the Supreme Court. There's always the Supreme Court. There's always going to be a difference between George W. Bush's choice for the Supreme Court and Al Gore's choice for the Supreme Court. And we've seen that George W. Bush's choice wrote the opinion overturning Roe versus Wade. Has that finally penetrated on the Democratic side of the electorate?
Oh, I think so. I think people have come to understand that so much of what we counted on for a very long time, and that was the security, the independence of our courts, that our courts would not be political, and that our courts were fundamentally about protecting our rights, not about hollowing out those rights, or in the case of Roe versus Wade, actually taking them away. And the Republicans for a long time have been on the attack. They understand the importance of extremist courts, and they have pushed in that direction. They built the Federalist Society around that whole idea. And I got to say, Democrats just didn't tumble to it nearly as early. But we may wake up late, but we are fully awake now. And we understand what's on the ballot come November 2024. We need Joe Biden in the White House because of the good things he's going to do, but we also need him there because we simply cannot count on the United States Supreme Court to protect us as we once did. We have to have Joe Biden in the White House, Democrats in the House and in the Senate, so that we can actually deliver on Roe versus Wade, on voting rights, on the right to join a union, on protecting people with gun safety, on climate, on so many things that touch each of us individually every day. This election in November is absolutely crucial, and we're awake and ready to fight for it.
Senator Elizabeth Warren, running for re-election in Massachusetts, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.